Hey, what's up creatures? It's Em, and today I want to introduce you to all of my rescued reptiles. The last 10 years has just seen a surge in people wanting to keep reptiles, and oftentimes people will buy a beautiful chameleon or a gecko or some kind of snake and not realize the kind of dedication that it takes to make that animal thrive and not just survive. And unfortunately, that's where people discard their animals, just like,
I'm done with you. Goodbye.
and that's kind of where I've come into a couple of different reptiles' lives. Today's video is sponsored by Amino Apps. If you're really into your reptiles, you will love the Amino reptile community because it's a budding community where people can share their tips, their knowledge, and talk at length whenever you want about reptiles. There are featured posts, quizzes, polls, and community chats. We need you in there because people are always asking questions and people need help with their reptiles and they don't always know where to go. So please, if you keep reptiles and you think you've got a good knowledge of reptiles, head over into that community. Or if you need help with your snakes, head over into the Amino app and people will be there to help you out. And I'm actually going to be in there to do a Q&A in a couple of days time. You can find all my Q&A details in the description box below, as well as finding out more about the Amino app. Now, I'm not an official rescue here at home. In order to be a rescue in New Jersey, you must be licensed. But in the area, we're friends with a lot of licensed rescues, and what they do is they will take on the animals which people dump on us. Certain animals end up staying with us if we are licensed to keep that animal. But a lot of the animals that come through here, we can't keep just due to space. It's a great thing to want to rescue animals, but it's not a great thing to fill your home and then get in over your head with expenses and too many enclosures to clean and too many animals to feed. That's when hoarding comes into things, and that's not a healthy thing to do. If you want to rescue animals, make sure you have the time and the funds to actually do it. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my rescued reptiles and the ones that live at home here, some of which have some special needs. If you haven't already, remember to hit that subscribe button down below, become part of the creature crew, and also hit that notification bell so you can be one of the first to see when I upload a new video. Thank you, Ziggy. The first gecko I want to introduce you to is Ziggy. Now, Ziggy is a crested gecko, and the first thing you'll notice about Ziggy is that he actually doesn't have a tail. Crested geckos can perform something called caudal autotomy, which is where they can decide to drop their tails if they feel threatened. I don't know how Ziggy dropped his tail because he already came to us with a dropped tail. These particular geckos cannot regrow their tails, so he will always forever be a frog butt.
Look at the frog butt.
I actually met Ziggy about a year ago at the White Plains Reptile Expo in New York. I have a couple of friends who are vendors up there, and they had this guy come in as part of a trade-in. So basically in the reptile hobby, a lot of these vendors will actually trade animals. So for example, someone will come up to them and say, hey, I've got 3 pairs of breeding leopard geckos. I want to have a snake. Will you do a trade? And then they'll trade. Ziggy over here was part of a trade. He actually came in as an ex-breeder male. It was honestly love at first sight when I met Ziggy, and when I saw his face, I am not joking, I actually cried laughing because he just looks so funny. And the person who was selling him, who happens to be a friend of mine, said, you know what, rehoming fee like $10, take him, you can just look after him. I know you're gonna love him. So we got Ziggy, and we love Ziggy very, very much. The other thing you'll notice about Ziggy is that eyeball. Look how dilated that pupil is. That eyeball should not look like that. They should both, in this really high light, be small little slits. It's really only at nighttime that you'll see the iris of a crested gecko really dilated because that helps to let in more light for them to catch their food. The truth is that nobody really knows how Ziggy managed to get his eyeball in such a state. We took him to the vet, and our vet believes that he might have sustained head trauma. Most geckos love to hide away during the daytime and daylight hours behind little bits of decor, or smushed against the glass, or in a hide, or behind a piece of wood. Not Ziggy. Ziggy does not feel safe elevated. He much prefers to be under his substrate, so he every single time will tunnel beneath his substrate. You cannot see him at all. He is never on display. That eyeball does mean that he is not very good at judging the distance for jumps, and sometimes he gets it very, very wrong. But it doesn't inhibit him too much when it comes to catching his food. Ziggy loves to have his Rapashi diet or Pangea diet, but not only that, he will have crickets as well. So we do give him dusted crickets a couple of times a week, and he does manage to catch them eventually. So that's really good news. Can you see that Ziggy has changed color since he's been out? When he is fired down or resting, he's usually a sort of greeny yellow color all over, but when he fires up, his back goes a dark chocolate brown, which it's starting to do now. We really don't have any plans to breed any of our reptiles at the moment here at home, and especially not any of the really mass-produced reptiles, which crested geckos sadly are. So he's just a pet. You're just a much-loved pet. So that's just Ziggy, our very special crested gecko, who is just the most wonderful little personality. It's noodle time! Some of you may remember this beautiful danger noodle right here. This is Zombie, and I'll come on to her name in a little while. Zombie is a grey-banded kingsnake, and it's obvious to see why they're called grey-banded kingsnakes. Grey-banded kingsnakes are actually native to Texas, and they only occur in a couple of small different locations. Now, I love Mexican black kingsnakes, but to me, the grey-banded kingsnake takes the just prize for the most beautiful kingsnake. I mean, feel free to discuss your favorite kingsnakes and your favorite morphs in the comment section below, but for me, I just absolutely adore the grey-banded. For me, the grey-banded kingsnake, there's just no other snake like the grey-banded. They're just so beautiful. Just like Ziggy, Zombie over here is an ex-breeder snake. So she was basically just kept for somebody who wanted to produce lots of different kinds of snakes. When snakes get a little bit older, it's not really fair to breed them anymore. So the person who gave her up actually gave her to a friend of mine who works over at White Plains Reptile Expo, and he got in touch with me and said, Em, I know you like animals which have interesting eyes. Do you want this special girl? She has very special eyes. And I said, yes, please. Do you see her eyes? They're a really opaque blue color. Usually those sort of colors in a snake's eyes means that they're in a very deep shed and that they shouldn't be disturbed. But with Zombie, they're actually cataracts. Just like our really big python Bess, she actually is so old that she has cataracts. Now, cataracts are not always due to age in snakes. These snakes do not like too much light, and this is what can happen to their eyes if you expose them to too much UV light. Just judging on the way that a lot of people keep their breeder snakes, which is usually in a racking system, I can't imagine that there would be too much light in there. So I don't believe that her cataracts are actually due to too much light. I think it's probably more to the fact that she is a very, very old snake. The amazing thing about snakes is that they actually rely more on their sense of smell or their tongue to actually get around. So with Zombie, although she doesn't have the ability to see anything at all, she's completely blind, she doesn't worry at all because she can still sense her environment through heat detection. Oh, you're so beautiful. Hit that like button if you think the grey-banded kingsnake is gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
You are gorgeous, yes you are. Next, I want to introduce you to Bess. Bess is our large Burmese python, and he came to us through a really interesting circumstance. Now for Bess, because he's so large, it's very uncomfortable for him to be held just by me. And because I'm home alone, I don't handle Bess. Bess is a very, very calm snake, has never struck or even hissed or puffed or made any inclination at all that he's dangerous, but he is a large constrictor. And personally, I don't handle any large constrictors over 6 feet in length. But I hope that you'll forgive me for not having Bess out here right this second. I don't want to make him feel uncomfortable. Now, Bess's story is really interesting. Bess actually was called BP for Burmese python. Bess has always been a New Jersey resident, and he used to belong to someone who loved him so much. So much. BP, now called Bess, used to have free roam of the house. Free roam. Now, although I love the fact that his original owner loved to let him free roaming actually does cause some difficulties. Number one, if your snake gets lodged somewhere or injured, they're very difficult to dislodge. And secondly, and most importantly, is actually the snake's health. They need to have a very hot basking area because they have so much mass to them. And something that you need to know about large constrictors is if they don't have heat, they're not properly digesting their food. It just sits there and rots in their stomach. That's why it's so important to have the adequate heat for your snake. When Bess was about 2 or 3 years old, he was introduced to a boa constrictor, and his previous owner was hoping they'd get along famously as friends. No, Bess actually ate his companion, and it just goes to show that you should never keep snakes cohabiting together unless you are an experienced breeder and it's the breeding season. But in general, just don't keep your snakes together. It's much better safe than sorry. In fact, some snakes will actually eat each other. King snakes, for example, will eat each other. So you have to be very, very careful not to cohabit a lot of snakes. They can injure or kill and eat each other. Unfortunately, after about 20 years of keeping BP, now called Bess, his owner passed away. And the reason why we've called BP Bess is because that was his previous owner's last name. So we thought it'd be nice to keep his legacy alive and to basically give Bess a really, really lovely home. It was actually some lovely family members of BP/Bess who got in contact with us and said, look, could you take him, because we don't have the basically facilities or the experience to look after him. And when we went over, I just fell in love with this snake. He was just coiled up near a sofa, near a little like sofa chair thing, and he was so gentle. He was very cold, of course, because he doesn't have a basking area, and he cuddled straight up to me because I had a lot of heat. And we could tell straight away his age because he had these massive cataracts. In fact, his eyes are very bulgy all the time. We don't know why. The vet doesn't know why. It's just an age thing. And also very heavy cataracts. So he always looks like he's in shed. Always.
Although our python here at home is very, very docile, don't take that for granted. You know, snakes are predators. They are a top predator, and there's a reason they are so successful. So don't take it for granted. Even though your snake is really, really good and really relaxed around you, all it takes is that one wrong move and everything goes wrong. So please always take caution when you're handling any snakes at all.
Bad Idea, our female bearded dragon, came to us when her owners couldn't look after her anymore. She didn't have the proper diet, so she is a very stunted bearded dragon. She's not a Rankin's dragon, which is, you know, a very small species of bearded dragon. She is just a very stunted female. It's not known exactly how old Bad Idea is. Again, with rescues, it's very difficult to tell, but she is an adult female. She's not going to be used for any breeding projects. She is literally just a pet, and she goes out on shows as well because she's a great educational animal. There is a massive surplus of these guys. You can actually pick up adults for close to nothing. You know, if you go to a rescue, you can get an adult for $20, $30. They are in every single reptile rescue and they can't be housed together. So please do yourself a favor, and if you're considering a bearded dragon, please consider adopting. Now, here's someone you have not seen for the longest time, and I do apologize for not showing her off as much. This beautiful girl is Car, and she was my first snake ever about 11 years ago. I was actually working with snakes before I even took the plunge of keeping a snake at home, and this gorgeous girl was my very, very first. I am very attached to this snake, and I have just gone through hell and back trying to stay with her in my life. Some of you will know this species of snake as a royal python, myself included because I was brought up in the United Kingdom, but a lot of you will know them as ball pythons. The reason why they are called ball pythons is because when they are threatened, they can roll up into a really, really tight ball. The reason why they are called royal pythons is because there is a rumor, not substantiated, that it was actually Queen Cleopatra used to wear them as bracelets, because when they're small or when they're hatchlings, they do tend to wrap around your hand very, very tightly. So it's believed that actually Cleopatra used to wear them as bracelets. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but I believe that's why they are called royal pythons. Car's story is really interesting. I've actually done a whole video about her full story, which you can find in the description box below. I believe it's called She Was a Prize. I think that's what the video is called, or at least the thumbnail. I'll have to try and find it. Hello, sausage. I love you. I do. Car was actually a prize in a card game. Yes, literally, people were in a pub one day playing cards and Car was the prize, along with some money, I believe. And when the guy who actually won her realized that he didn't know the first thing about snakes and was actually afraid of her, he literally took her out of his pocket. He told me this, took her out of his pocket and put her in a sink and covered the sink with a heavy atlas so that she couldn't get out. And then he did, thankfully, the right thing of calling around to different places to see if somebody had the ability to basically rescue her and take her off of his hands. She's just like the best ball python ever. She's not head shy or anything. She's just the most wonderful snake and I love her so much. We've literally been colleagues now because we used to work together all the time, like almost twice a week we'd work together, because that's how often our animals are allowed to go out. They were only allowed to be worked 2 days a week, but she would work with me 2 days a week, going into schools and giving talks. She actually even went to prisons to help teach prisoners about empathy and how to be respectful of other living creatures. So yeah, she had a very, very important job. Are you saying hello to everyone? Say hi, creature crew. Remember me? Look at me, I'm so beautiful. Yes, you are. She is just such a character for a ball python. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but ball pythons, although they tend to be kept in the United States as terrestrial creatures, they're semi-arboreal. If you give them the space to climb, they will climb. So if you have a ball python, definitely bring them out on occasion when they're not in shed and when they're not digesting, to just be able to climb and get around, because they love that. Look at her, she's totally telescoping me. The beauty of Kaa is she is just a normal ball python. She is not a fancy morph. Some people literally spend thousands of dollars on snakes. And before anyone says anything, I'm not throwing shade at anyone in particular. People always think that I'm throwing shade at other pet YouTubers. I'm not. I just don't understand why anyone, not just specific pet YouTubers, but why anyone would spend thousands of dollars on a snake which is so commonly available. And you can't get better than this pattern. That's just my personal opinion. You can't get better than this. This is just, you're perfect. You are, you're so perfect, and you know it. She's just, oh. And she is proof that it's not in the purchase price of an animal where the animal's worth is defined. She has literally changed people's lives the better, helped people to overcome their crippling phobias. She's brought tears to the eyes of special needs kids who were not able to show any kind of emotion, and yet they were so moved when they met her, because she is so gentle and so wonderful. And I can't, like, this snake is everything to me. And when I moved from the UK, I had to leave a lot of my animals behind because they were not legal to bring with me. You know, I petitioned. That's why it took me so long to get here, because I petitioned so hard and they just said no. But I would not leave her behind, and luckily she is not illegal to import into the United States. So after a very lengthy process and quite an expensive process, she is here. Like, where I go, she goes. I will never be without this snake. She means way too much to me, and I just love her so much. I do. I really do. But what's this? Another crested gecko? Yes, because we actually always have at least 2 crested geckos at home, because we always take them on shows and we like to alternate them so they don't work too many days a week. But this over here is more Danny's gecko. This is Musketeer. Musketeer was a rescue who Danny took on, and he actually came in with a female called Twinkie. Twinkie was severely obese. Both of them were obese because their owners loved them a bit too much in their previous home and fed them way too much, and now he's actually at a decent weight, whereas before he was just, there's no other way of putting it, he was overweight massively for a crested gecko, which is not good for them. It wasn't healthy. Twinkie, especially his girlfriend, was exceptionally overweight to the point where her skin from her chin would literally drag along the floor. I'll see if I can get some pictures of her. Now, crested geckos shouldn't really live together. As juveniles, they can do fairly well together, but they will still nip at each other's tails. But as adults, they should not really live together, especially 2 males. 2 males together is just not a good idea, because they will hurt each other badly, to the point of one might be able to kill the other. So we actually took the decision to split Twinkie to give her a break from being a breeder, and in that break we decided that we were going to rehome Twinkie, who some of you will have seen on our earlier live streams at the end of last year. But she did so well, shedding a whole load of weight, and she went to a home where she is now literally just a pet, and she belongs to a lovely young girl who does keep in contact and absolutely loves having Twinkie at home, and Twinkie doesn't have to be a breeder ever again. But we decided to hold on to Musketeer because Musketeer is Ziggy's relief worker. So when Ziggy goes out maybe once or twice a week, that's all Ziggy does when he goes on school shows, and then the rest of the time it's Musketeer. This next creature I decided I was going to do a very short segment on, so I apologize if I breeze through it, but I don't want to encourage them as pets. This is actually Fluffy. He is our alligator snapping turtle, and that beak there is not bluffing. He can do a lot of damage if he wants to. Now with Fluffy, I also don't want to stress him out too much, so I'm going to put him away in a second. He doesn't get handled all that often at all. There you go, as you can see why. But Fluffy is an alligator snapping turtle who came to us when his owners decided that they didn't want to keep him anymore. He started off very cute, no bigger than something that could fit in the size of your palm, or even in the size of a child's palm, but very soon they get very big, very snappy, and they're not at all fun to keep. So that there is Fluffy. I do not recommend them as pets at all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video soon. Bye!